Hi, this is Jurgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis channel. This particular episode is a follow up to my last episode, which revolved around how the self is an illusion and the psychological trick behind that illusion. So, if you haven't watched that episode, I recommend going back and watching it because today's episode will make more sense if you have watched that. So, one natural follow up question then becomes if the self is an illusion, meaning if there's no such thing as a self in there, so what? What are some of the practical applications or implications of that? Meaning for us that work with clients who may be coaches, psychotherapists, hypnotherapists, NLP based agents of change, uh, what difference does this really make? So there's a lot of stuff you can do with clients in this area. And also with yourself if you're not a coach, if you're just looking for self-application. Um, this particular episode, though, is just going to dip your toes into some ideas around it. It's not going to be an exhaustive, in-depth video about how to do these things, but it will hopefully open your mind up to some of the possibilities. So let's look at this. If there's no such thing as a self in there, if there's no thinker behind the thoughts, if there's no feeler behind the feelings, if there's no doer behind the actions, um, if there's no self, but instead there's the activity of selfing, of self-referential thinking going on. If we can see that what we have thought of as a self is more accurately described as selfing, as a fluid process, as a habit, as an activity, that opens up quite a few doors. So let me give you a few examples. So, for example, if I have someone who claims to have fear of flying, they might very often say something to the extent of, I'm stuck in the plane. I'm stuck in this plane for 4 hours, and that really freaks me out. Now, if you listen to their language, there's an identification with the body, and there's this perception that I am located in the plane and can't get out when I want to, and that freaks me out. So one thing I will very often do with these folks is I will help them focus on the feelings of floating and to picture themselves or to picture the plane as an image of their physical body. So I might say, play with the captain's hands being extensions of your hands, or your head being the cockpit, and your arms being the wings. I have them practice and playing until they find some way of imaging it that feels right. So I have them then do the plane ride from the perspective of the plane being an extension of their body in the same way that a bicycle could be an extension of the body, or a hammer could be an extension of the body, to the point where it's no longer them and the plane, they are the plane. They have the felt experience that they are this plane ride. And very often when people are anxious, they're kind of in their mind fighting the plane, so to speak. But when you're floating with the body and viewing the plane as an extension of your physical body, it tells your mind body system to just float and to just relax in a way that it can comprehend. This is often a very, very nice strategy. To give credit where credit is due, I got this particular strategy from the psychiatrist and hypnosis pioneer Herbert Spiegel. Um, and of course, he never talked about the self being an illusion in any way. So this is a kind of dipping your toes into the idea, right? Now let's go a little bit further. So with people who are claustrophobic, Noticing I'm not saying suffering from claustrophobia because it's not a thing. I'm saying the activity of claustrophobicing, just like with the plane example, there's this perception that I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the elevator. I'm stuck in the tunnel. I'm stuck in the plane, and I can't leave when I want to, and that freaks me out. Now, what I might very often do with these people is I may help them realize that what they call the plane or the tunnel or the elevator is an appearance in consciousness. So, at the level of experience, there's no distinction between what you call meaning my hands, my breathing, my thoughts, what people deem as inside themselves, and the tree over there, or the car, or the window that they deem the outside world. You know, at the level of experience, this is all taking place in the same open space of consciousness. There's a thought process that says that the sun is not me, but these particular breathing sensations are me. This is my butt, which is me or mine, and that's the chair that it's sitting on, and that's not me, right? But all of this happens in the exact same space of awareness. And I go through various self inquiry exercises with them under the premise of if you can see something, if you can observe something, it's not you. You know, the the object, that which is seen, can't be the subject. And I have them notice that thoughts come and go in consciousness. But every time a thought disappears or dissolves, that which remains, that which knew the thought and remains after the thought disappears, is not a thought. So if their being, if their consciousness remains every time a thought dissolves, that has to mean that the thought is not essential to who they are. In other words, they're not their thinking, they're not their feeling, they're not their perceptions. And to notice that that which knows the perceptions and sensations doesn't really change. So at the level of experience, it's all taking place in the same open space of consciousness. At the level of experience, there's just cognitions, emotions, perceptions, and sensations. And that which knows these perceptions and sensations does not dissolve or disappear anytime the sensations or perceptions dissolve. So I help them kind of take the identity of being that which knows the experience. So that which knows the experience is not fused with the experience. So this perceptual shift then allows them to realize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not stuck in the plane or the elevator or the tunnel. The tunnel is appearing in me. The plane trip is appearing in me. The elevator is appearing in me. It comes and goes in me. Very difficult to have the activity labeled claustrophobia with that perceptual shift. Now, let me move on a little bit, but it's the same thing. Let's say I have someone who says they struggle with social anxiety. Now, this, of course, is social anxietizing. This is another process. So, one way to deal with that, of course, is to help someone realize that they are not who other people think them up to be, meaning they are not made up of other people's stories. To be able to create clear distinctions between yourself and other people's stories about you so that you no longer seem to be made up by what other people say or by what you think they might be thinking about you, right? So that's one way of dealing with it. But there's another very interesting way of dealing with it as well. And what I have clients do, and this is something I've taken from Douglas Harding, who talked about the headless way, and you can explore this with yourself too. I have people notice that they can see things around them. So I might have them orient toward, various visual objects around them, and then I might say, now look for what's looking, or look for your own head, look for your own face. And to just notice that you can't see your own face. Now you might think, well, of course, like, so what? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that we have learned to see ourselves exclusively the way we may appear from the outside, the way we may appear from a third person perspective, right? So if you were in front of me, from your perspective, if you were 2 meters away, I would look like a body. I would, you would see this particular face and you would say, yes, you have a head. I can see your head. I can see your face. But how I look to you too completely depends upon the distance. So if you came closer, the face would disappear and you just see patches of skin. If you had the right instruments and could come even closer, you'd see cells, you see molecules, you see atoms, subatomic particles. And if you could come even closer than that, you'd likely just see pure space. Just if you started to move backwards again, you could say, now I see some subatomic particles with the right instruments. I see atoms, I see molecules, I see cells, I see patches of skin. Oh, now I see a face, I see this body again. But if you were to move even further away, you'd see the city limits. And if you were to move even further away, you'd see the planets. So you'd see my planetary face, so to speak. So how I appear to you completely depends upon your relative position. But this is an outside third position perspective. From my perspective, from the perspective of the open space, I don't have a face. I don't have a head. Where you see a head, from my perspective, there's just the open space of consciousness. It's just the open space that the world appears in. There's no separation. So from this perspective, so they're both right in a sense, right? So I could tell you two different stories. If you had asked me, hey, Jurgen, what have you been up to today? What have you done? I could have told you, well, I've been at the office. I've seen a client, and then I did a follow up, and then I went to the store, and then I went to pick up my son, at daycare, and I've been home with the kids a little bit, and now I'm back at the office, to shoot this video and to see a couple more clients. That's true. I mean, these are true statements about my activities during the day from a third person perspective. From a first person perspective, from the perspective of ground zero, so to speak, I never go anywhere. I never go anywhere. The store appeared in me. The car ride and the objects appeared in me, meaning in the open space of consciousness. The office and the client appeared in me. And then the daycare center appeared in me. And then my kids appeared in me. So, from this perspective, I never actually really go anywhere. Perceptions and sensations appear in me. So, we could say, I have gone to all these different places, and it's true from a third person perspective, but it's not true from my perspective. From my perspective, I never really go anywhere. The world, people, perceptions, and sensations appear in me. So I help clients via various nonverbal perceptual exercises to facilitate or to recognize this perceptual shift and to be able to see that, look, this feeling of social anxiety, of being judged, of someone looking at you and judging you, to have that experience, you have to view yourself from a third person perspective. If you look at the world and look at what's looking, you'll see that there's nothing here. There's just the open space of consciousness. Now, what you have labeled the other person's face appears, and there's just one face in the conversation. You, the open space of awareness, is just space for that person's face to appear. Your space for the world. And from that position, you could say that you're swapping faces with the other person. That person's face is your face. From that particular position, it's all one. There's no separation between a me and this perception that's distinct but not separate in consciousness. There's there's no social anxiety from that perspective. There's no location or center to be neurotic from. Some of you might say, well, I see my nose. Well, those perceptions arise from the same empty space. Or you might say, yeah, but I can see my face in the mirror. But notice, that's only your face from a third person perspective. That face that you see in the mirror is seen in the mirror. It's not on your shoulders. If you see the face you call yours, which is yours from a third person perspective, you look in the mirror, notice that if you follow the gaze of your face backwards towards what's looking, and you do that quickly, you find this open space that you are. So I'm saying that you are that, but from the perspective of consciousness, consciousness itself doesn't feel like a self. But from this perspective, you could say that you are the world. You are this other person, which isn't another person. You are this person. There's just one thing. And from that perspective, there's really no social anxiety. Now, for practical purposes, uh, you can master both perceptions. They're a bit like the old. If you've seen the visual illusion of the young woman and the old woman, where people discover that you can see both, not at the same time, but sequentially. And then you might ask the question, well, where is the old woman when I view the young woman? And the answer is she's not there. None of them have any existence outside of the thought process that makes them up. That's also fundamentally true here. So you've had a lot of experience living and acting as if you are this organism that you appear to be from a third person perspective. I'm not saying that's not true, but from a ground zero, first person perspective, so to speak, it looks completely different. So check out Douglas Harding. Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, also has a very, very nice chapter on this. But you can practice this throughout the day. You can practice looking at objects and then look for what's looking. Just turn consciousness very quickly upon itself. Look for your own face and notice that you can't see it. And notice that where your head was supposed to be, there's just the world. There's just space for the world. And practice that so that when you drive, when you go to the store, notice that the store appears in you. The car ride appears in you. These perceptions and sensations appear in you. And explore that, really explore that, and notice what that is like. Now, as I said, as I warned you in the beginning of this video, I was just going to dip your toes into this a little bit. There's a lot of, for most people, there's a lot of meditation and experiments to do to really have these perceptual shifts. Um, and of course, there's a lot of suggestion artistry with how you use language and suggestions and create frames and create a learning context for people to have these insights and to be able to contextualize them to the issues that they actually came in with. So I hope I hope this was useful for you. My way of working appeals to you and you want to do some mentoring or you want to make some sort of change in your life or you want to explore this more deeply, you can reach me at provocativehypnosis.com. Till next time.